It's a cold March night in Sutter's Holler, past midnight, and you hear the sound the old-timers still swear by. 3 slow raps on Eula Barrow's cabin door, space too even to be a nervous hand, and a lantern already moving behind her oilcloth window, because Eula was dressed and waiting before anyone ever climbed her path. If you've ever heard a knock and known, before you looked, that no one should be there, then you already understand this story. That's the wrong detail you can't shake, not the cold, not the hour. It's that she knew. They say Eula Barrow always knew before the knock came. A soul would take a bad turn in a cabin 4 miles off, and up the holler, she'd be lacing her boots by the fire, waiting on a hand that hadn't lifted yet. She lived alone, up past the last bend of the holler, past the Cawley farm and the dry well that hadn't given water in 30 years. Her cabin was old before she was. Her grandmother birthed babies in that same front room, and her grandmother before that. 3 generations of Barrow women caught the county's children, and folks agreed on one thing. Eula was the best of them. Sure hands. No fever ever took a mother she tended. No breach she couldn't turn. But they said she could do the other thing too. Ease a baby into the world, or usher a soul out of it. And some nights, when the lantern moved down that path, nobody in the holler was certain which she'd been called to do. You want proof she was gifted? The winter the Pruitt baby came sideways in a snowstorm, Eula walked 4 miles through drifts up to her waist, worked till dawn, and both the mother and that child lived. After that, no one crossed her to her face. Count them with me. 1 knock, then 2, then 3. Remember that. Because there was a warning old Delia Cawley gave every young mother in the holler, and it was about the knocks, about how many, and what each one meant. 1 knock meant one thing. 3 meant something else entirely. And the mothers who listened learned never to answer wrong. Old Delia Cawley spelled it out plain, the way you'd tell a child not to touch the stove. 1 knock for a birth, 3 for the other. And whatever you did, you never counted out loud. You'd have counted them too, under your breath, in the dark, hoping it stopped at 1. Everybody did. You'd lie there in your own cabin, and if the knocks carried down the holler, you'd find your lips moving before you could stop them. Then, you started noticing what came with the 3. Whenever Eula sat a death watch, folks heard it. A low humming out past the tree line. No words in it, just a sound that moved between the pines, slow, the way a man walks when he's in no hurry to get where he's going. You couldn't point to it. You just knew it was there, moving, and that it hadn't come to help. And the dogs wouldn't go up her path. Big farm dogs that'd tree a bear would stand at the bottom of that trail with their hackles up, and no coaxing moved them. Nobody could tell you why. They just knew better than their owners did. Then there was the trapper named Odell. One November, cold enough to see your breath, he came down off the ridge white as the frost and swore to what he'd seen in Eula's dooryard. A shape, standing near the porch, tall and thin and wrong. Put together like a man but not one, and Eula standing right beside it. Easy, like an old friend. Picture what Odell saw standing in that dooryard, and understand why he never went back. The 2 of them weren't talking. They were both just looking down at something on the porch step. A swaddled bundle, small, set there in the dark like a thing left out for collecting. Odell never trapped that ridge again. Sold his lines that spring. Then came the winter the sickness moved through the holler, cabin after cabin, and when the fever peaked, Eula came. And where she sat, the sick either rose whole by morning or lay cold by first light. Never anything between. And folks finally saw the shape of it, 1 for 1. A child saved here, a grandmother gone there, like the ledger had to balance. They say Eula wasn't choosing at all. The thing in the pines was, and she was only its hands, which left one question nobody wanted answered. What happens on the night the ledger comes for the woman who kept it? So it came, the way everything in that holler came in the end. Eula Barrow lay dying at last. old, finally frail. The sure hands gone thin and cold in her lap. The woman who'd walked 4 miles through a snowstorm, now unable to rise from her own bed. And past midnight, the whole Holler heard it. 3 slow raps on her door. Even. Space too even to be a nervous hand. Not one living soul had climbed that path. And you already know how many knocks came. You counted them in the beginning. 1 for a birth. 3 for the other. 3 on the door of the woman who taught the county what 3 meant. The folks close enough to hear it swore the humming came up out of the pines that night. Not out past the tree line where it always stayed. Up, onto the porch. Closer than it had ever come. Right against the oilcloth window where the lantern still burned warm behind the glass. By morning she was gone. The cabin stood empty. The bed was made, smooth flat like she'd never lain in it at all. And the lantern still warm, the wick just gone out, as if she'd carried the light to the door and set it down and stepped through. No tracks in the March mud outside. No body was ever buried. The woman who had eased every soul in and out of that Holler, in and out through that same door, left by the door she'd always opened for others. She just walked out of the world the way she'd ushered so many others out of it. And that's when the old-timers understood the shape of the thing. The ledger always balanced, 1 saved, 1 gone. Every knock, every death watch, every child that rose whole, while a grandmother went cold by first light. She was never the one choosing. She was the hands. And a ledger like that has to close on its keeper too. Eula paid her own balance, taking out the same door she'd carried so many through. They tell it still, low and late, when the fire's near out and nobody wants to be the last one talking. That the Barrow cabin stands empty up the last bend past the dry well. But the lantern light shows some March nights, warm behind an oilcloth window, in a cabin where no one lives. So the next time it's late and the fire's low and you hear 3 even knocks, you know the one thing the whole Holler knows. Don't answer, and don't count out loud, because Eula's still keeping the ledger, and the thing in the pines is still waiting on its next set of hands.